Hello everyone and welcome to the CEU course, Physiological Analysis of Men's Basketball. Game structure and rules. The game of basketball is a 5v5 game with 4 quarters of 12 minutes each in the NBA. A 24-second shot clock ensures fast pace of play, and a court size of 28 by 15 meters or around 92 by 49 feet gives a small space for the game to be played. Movement demands. Players cover on average 6 to 7 kilometers or 3.7 to 4.3 miles per game, with 45 changes in movement type per minute between cuts, stops, and sprints, and players average around 44 jumps per game or 1 per minute. Sprint frequency and speed thresholds. The average sprint time of a basketball player is 1 to 3 seconds, with 6 to 8 high-speed runs per game. Guards exhibit the highest max sprint speed of around 6.7 meters per second, and centers fall all the way down to 5.9 meters per second. Players like forwards typically fall between these two numbers, or around 6.4 meters per second. Acceleration and deceleration metrics. Players often accelerate 6 to 8 times per minute, guards being on the higher end of that range, and centers typically falling on the lower end. Each acceleration is paired with a single deceleration. However, there are 2 large decelerations per minute, like a complete stop or a complete change of direction. Change of direction or velocity changes every 2 to 3 seconds. Jump frequency and vertical profiles. A player exhibits around 44, give or take 7, jumps per game, which equates to about 1 per minute. Jump heights range from 57 to 65 centimeters or 22 to 25 centimeters in a counter movement jump, and even higher for backcourt players. Guards, however, exhibit the highest jumps of around 60 to 73 centimeters or 23.6 to 28.7 inches. Energy system contributions. The ATP-PC system is dominant for jumps and sprints. Glycolytic system dominant during extended sequences like plays back-to-back, and the aerobic system underpins recovery between sprints. Heart rate and internal load. The average heart rates fall typically between 85 and 95% of heart rate max, and heart rate remains elevated due to repeated efforts. Guards' mean heart rate tends to be higher, between 88 and 90% of heart rate max, whereas centers tend to be lower, between 82 and 85% of heart rate max. Work-to-rest ratios and bioenergetic implications. In-game work-to-rest ratios typically can be seen at 1 to 6 or 1 to 10. This permits partial ATP-PC replenishment and lactate clearance during the rest following the work. Training should both mimic and prepare for worst-case scenarios seen in the sport. An example here is 10 seconds of work followed by 60 seconds of rest, and that rest being walking or jogging. Blood lactate concentrations. Typical in-game ranges between 3.2 to 6.8 millimoles per liter. These levels indicate significant glycolytic output, as at rest we see around 0.5 to 1 millimoles per liter. Peak often occurs after consecutive high-intensity plays. In the chart here we see that at rest, again it is 0.5 to 1 millimoles per liter. Basketball in-game is around 3.2 to 6.8 millimoles per liter. And then for another example of a 400-meter sprint all out, we would typically see ranges of around 12 to 15 millimoles per liter. distance covered by position. Guards typically cover the most ground during a basketball game, between 6 to 7 kilometers. Forwards fall just below at 5 to 6 kilometers, and centers typically exhibit the lowest distance covered at 4 to 5 kilometers per game. Speed zones and movement classifications. As we see in the chart, 67% of distance covered is less than or equal to 3.33 meters per second. 2 to 3% of distance is covered greater than 5 meters per second. And 0.2% of distance is covered greater than 6.67 meters per second. So most of the game is covered at lower than a jog speed. Positional anthropometrics. Guards are typically shorter, between 1.8 and 1.9 meters, and lighter, 75 to 85 kilograms. Forwards are typically a medium tall, or 1.93 to 2.0 meters, and mid-weight, between 88 and 96 kilograms. Centers are typically the tallest players on the court at 2.07 meters or above, and the heaviest as well at 100 to 115 kilograms. Point guard physiology. Point guards at the elite level typically display a VO2 max rating of 50 to 60 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Point guards typically have the fastest sprint acceleration and max sprint speed, as well as highest vertical jump. And they also perform the most high-intensity movements per game at around 1,100 movements per game. Shooting guard physiology. Shooting guards typically display a VO2 max of 50 to 58 milliliters per kilogram per minute. They are slightly below guards for speed and vertical jump ability, and display the second highest high-intensity movement of 1,050 per game. Small forward physiology. Small forwards display a VO2 max of around 48 to 55 milliliters per kilogram per minute, a vertical jump between 58 and 69 centimeters, and 1,000 high-intensity movements per game. Power forward physiology. Power forwards have one of the highest strength levels on the team, that being absolute strength, typically around 100 plus kilograms of a bench press. They typically display a vertical jump between 40 to 63 centimeters, and again around 1,000 high-intensity movements per game. Center physiology. Centers typically display the highest absolute strength on the team. They are the top in strength and power tests, but typically the lowest in speed and agility. And again, they are the lowest in high-intensity movements per game at around 800 to 1,000. Common injury mechanisms. Ankle sprains are the most common injury in basketball. Knee injuries are second, or ACL tears, which are common during abrupt decelerations or pivots. And patellar tendinopathy, or jumper's knee, is an overuse injury. Ankle sprains are typically inversion sprains of the lateral ankle ligaments. ACL tears are most commonly non-contact knee injury from poor landing or cutting biomechanics, and patellar tendinopathy often coming from overuse from repetitive jumping and landing mechanics. Prevention strategies and neuromuscular prep. Neuromuscular training involves balance and proprioceptive exercises. Jump and landing mechanics include knee alignment and deceleration technique. Eccentric strength programs typically aim to strengthen tendons and the musculature. Key performance indicators. Explosive power, often tested by vertical jump height. Speed and agility, measured by sprint time and change of direction drills. And endurance capacity, often tested using a yo-yo intermittent recovery test. Recommended testing protocols. Vertical jump tests, like a counter movement jump, are great for displaying power and vertical jump ability. Sprint and agility tests are used to look at max speed as well as change of direction efficiency. And endurance and repeat sprint tests are a good way to determine an athlete's ability to recover between repeated efforts. Strength and power development. Maximal strength training. This emphasizes compound lifts like squats, deadlifts, and Olympic lifts to build lower body and core strength, enhancing the force a player can apply in jumps and contacts. Plyometrics and explosive training incorporate jump training like box jumps and depth jumps, and medicine ball throws to convert strength into explosive power and improve rate of force development. Periodization means structuring training phases like off-season for hypertrophy and strength, pre-season power, in-season maintenance to progressively develop strength and power while avoiding excessive fatigue during competition. Conditioning strategies, both aerobic and anaerobic. High-intensity interval training. Things like interval runs or court suicides like 30 seconds hard and 30 to 60 seconds rest to boost aerobic capacity and simulate game-like work-to-rest ratios. Repeat sprint training, like workouts such as 6 by 20 meter sprints with 20 seconds rest to improve anaerobic glycolytic capacity and recovery between sprints. And then sport-specific drills like small-sided games or full-court scrimmages at high pace and controlled work-to-rest ratios to concurrently train basketball skills and conditioning in context. Position-specific programming takeaways. Guards, usually we like to emphasize agility and speed development, like lateral shuffling drills and high-intensity endurance repeated sprint efforts, to meet their high movement volume and quickness demands. Forwards utilize a blended approach, train both strength and power to excel in rebounding and inside play, as well as agility and speed to be effective on the perimeter, reflecting their hybrid role. Centers focus on strength and power, like heavy resistance work, power exercises for explosive jumps, while maintaining functional mobility and conditioning for shorter, intense efforts in the paint. Final recommendations and practical applications. Integrating sports science into basketball performance. Data-driven individualization. Use game and testing data to individualize training, like heart rate, distance, and jump height to make customized plans. Specificity and realism. Sport-specific drills. Use drills that mimic real game situations and replicate work-to-rest ratios and movement demands. And finally, implement a holistic periodization approach. Balance strength, endurance, agility, and recovery for season-long durability and peak performance. Thank you all for listening. I will be attaching a 10-question quiz in the description of this video.